hello again. Today we'll be learning how to make sounds with your mouth. Just kidding, today we'll be learning how to install windows in your camper van and set up your electrical system. But for real, I did figure out a new one. Listen to this. Crickets. Anyway, let's talk windows. The holes in our homes that give us light. It says that in the dictionary, or something like that. Windows in a van are not a must, but I would highly recommend them. You go from feeling like this to like this. We decided to put in 3 windows, really 2 types of windows. We have 2 bunk windows in the back and then 1 main bay window in the front. Probably wouldn't call it a bay window in a car. Front driver's side window. All the windows that we use can be found at Van Windows Direct. I love the name of that company. Like, you don't have to question what they're selling. They get straight and to the point. If you want to know the exact ones we got, here they are with the exact prices as well. And I'll say ahead of time, if I don't get really into the details on some of this, it's because they give really good instructions that come along with the windows. Okay, let's start with the driver's side window. Because this window was made specifically for a Ford Transit, there's ribs inside that will show you exactly where you need to cut. I went ahead and drilled some pilot holes around the corners almost to act as relief cuts to make that initial cut around the edges easier. After you do that, go ahead and get a straight edge and just draw a line in. Again, not necessarily mandatory because you can follow the rib inside. However, it's good to know you're on track from the inside and the outside. After you draw that line, make sure you put some masking tape around the edges just to make sure you're not scratching the vehicle with the jigsaw. Speaking of jigsaw, really speaking of jigsaw blade, you're cutting one of the biggest, if not the biggest hole in your van. You might as well get a new blade. It's worth it to pay an extra $1 for a brand new blade for this project. I just want to be real with you guys, and as I'm watching this time lapse, this looks, way sexier than it actually was. This is kind of more how it went. Yeah. So you'll get it cut out and then you'll have this panic attack because you just cut a gigantic hole in the side of your van, but it's pretty satisfying. Prime those edges with some Rust-Oleum to make sure it doesn't rust, and then you get to put on some trim lock edge molding. This should come along with your window kit, and it just protects the bare metal edge. If you're an avid window installer, you probably already know this, but it blew my mind. There are no screws involved in this window installation. That's right, it's just glue holding this window up. Right? So you use the urethane that comes with the window installation kit. And let me tell you, this is high viscosity urethane. If you're like, what does that even mean? It means your arm's gonna wanna fall off after installing this. I watched a video of a professional installer. I don't know why he was professional. He had a battery powered caulk gun. And I thought, what a wimp. I get it now. Makes sense. Nonetheless, we finished. Make sure it's a thick, even bead all the way around the window. Next is the exciting part, actually installing the window. I would say it's almost a must to have 2 people for this part. We borrowed some of these glass clamps. They're not necessarily mandatory for this project, but definitely helpful. Once the window's up, make sure it's in place and then give it a lot of pressure all the way around. Read your specific instructions on how long you need to let it set for and whether or not it calls for tape around the edges. So the driver's side window is done and we move to our bunk windows. Speaking of moving, I also moved from North Carolina to Michigan in the winter. New state, new temperature, but you don't care about that. Windows. First, create a template for your windows. I did this out of the box that it came in. You're then gonna need some type of grinder with a metal cutting disc to carefully cut off the metal ribs inside the van. I'm gonna be real with you. This part was super scary. You just don't always have a ton of control with a metal grinder. Yeah. Anyway, don't cut through the side of the van. After you make sure the inside's all set, same process, draw the lines, tape the outside. If you're by yourself, just doodle on a little pep talk. And then go ahead and cut your windows out. The install on the bunk windows are a little different. There's essentially a bracket on the inside and then the bunk window fits in and then you screw it around the edges. If you watched my floors and fans video, we used something called butyl tape. You should probably have extra from that project, or if you need to buy some, it's pretty cheap. Put this around the edging of the windows. It acts as a great sealant against the metal siding to help keep it watertight. A great way to tell if the window is secured tightly is if the butyl tape starts to squeeze out of the frame. You can then go around and just clean it up with a razor blade. Knowing what I know about windows, what would I change? I would keep 3 windows. I love the light that it brings into our van, and if you put any more windows in, I feel like it makes a big difference in how the van is insulated. What would I change? Nothing too significant. I would maybe change how I decided to frame the windows in, but that'll come later. Okay, the second part of this video is on, yes, you guessed it, you know it, you love it, electrical. You can tell by my voice, but I was being super sarcastic. Electrical is hands down the hardest part of the van build. Let me rephrase that. Electrical was hands down the hardest part for me for the van build. If you're an electrician, this will be easy. All right, electrical, here we go. Just kidding. I needed a snack. Okay. 2 disclaimers. 1, I am not an electrician. Not even close. Now, before you give up on me and exit out, my whole electrical system works. So if I can figure it out, you definitely can. Other disclaimer. You don't get a pretty time lapse for this entire video. You'll see me installing some wires right here, but then we're gonna move straight to just a still image of my electrical unit. I think it'll be more helpful that way. All you need to know about what's happening right now is we are running wires. We are making wire runs. I use mainly 2 types of wires. That's 12 and 14 gauge Anchor Marine grade duplex and triplex wire. Those fancy words pretty much mean that you have the negative and the positive running together, which keeps everything organized. There was a few other different gauge wires for other components that I'll make sure to have in the description. By the way, I don't talk about this, but all of the products and all of the van build videos right in the description. It's easy. Click on it. There you go. Biggest tip I have for wire runs is SOP. What did he say? SOP. Slack, organization, protection. Give yourself enough slack. Make sure to keep everything organized and labeled. Protect your wires. Once you have all your wire runs to the appropriate locations, you can now start to wire up your components. Scary. When people ask me, oh, how long did it take you to set up your electrical? That's how people sound. I tell them it took 2 days to install and it took 2 months to research. So make sure you're watching other videos, you're reading other blogs. There's so much good stuff out there on how to wire up your camper van correctly. All right, now I'm gonna throw up that still image and I'm gonna kind of get out of the way too. And there we go. All right, I'll go through things one at a time and make them as simple as possible. Let me start off by saying this looks way more complicated than it actually is. And again, if I can do it, trust me, you can do it. We'll start with batteries, which are hardly even in the picture. These 2 bad boys are each 200 amp hour Renogy deep cycle AGM 12 volt batteries. There's a ton of information out there on how to pick the right battery for you. It all depends on what you'll be charging, how much energy you'll be producing, and honestly, just in general, what kind of van life you're trying to live. There's really not a right or wrong. I will give a disclaimer about 2 different types of batteries. If you do go with AGM batteries, to maintain their life cycle, you can only drain them down to 50%. Lithium, that's fine. 100% to 0, charge it back up. Just something to think about. When you get 400 amp hours, you really only have 200 if you're using AGM batteries. All right, let's move on to producers. So you're gonna have producers and consumers. You need components that are going to produce energy for those batteries. The first and my favorite producer of energy is my Victron Energy Smart Solar MPPT charger. This is because you can't just connect the cords from the solar panel directly to the battery. This charge controller converts the energy from your solar panels into your batteries. The second producer of energy is the Sterling Pro Ultra battery to battery charger. This hooks directly to our Ford Transit's house battery, which obviously that battery is connected to our alternator. That's right. So say it's not sunny on a day, we can just drive the car around in means to charge our battery bank. Pretty neat. What's nice about the Ford Transit's battery, it's actually underneath the driver's seat. You don't need to run a wire all the way up into the hood of the vehicle. My last producer of energy is essentially a glorified trickle charger. If you watched our video on shore power, you learned about this already. This is a NOCO Genius 10 amp battery charger. This is so if you're parked at a friend's house and you have an extension cord, you can plug right in and be able to charge the batteries overnight. So MPPT solar charger, battery to battery alternator charger, NOCO Genius 10 amp trickle charger. Another thing we can cross off our list here are these switches. The big one in the middle is a master switch. That's if things go real catastrophic and you just need to turn everything off. Or if you're not using the van for a few months and don't want to be pulling any energy. These two switches are connected directly to our MPPT charger and our battery to battery charger. This way, if it's not sunny and I want to turn off our MPPT charger and just gain energy from battery to battery charger, all I have to do is turn a switch. Okay, moving on to the consumers of the energy that we've created for our batteries. First, you have the Renogy 100 watt 12 volt pure sine wave inverter. Inverters take a 12 volt DC power and turn it into 120 volt AC power. Simplified, this allows you to power things that you would normally plug into a normal wall outlet in a house. Side note, we used these for our wall outlets and they worked really great. This way we didn't have to wire anything up specifically. We were just able to plug the male end into the female end of the inverter. The other consumer of energy is literally everything else powered in the van. Just off the top of my head, refrigerator, kitchen, bed fan, toilet fan, LED lights, water pump, USB chargers. I'm missing some, but you get the point. They all run through this. And they're all protected by blade fuses. Blade fuses are what you would use in your car. And then speaking of fuses, we have some larger MIDI fuses in this block right here to protect some of the bigger components, and then other MIDI fuses in these two blocks right here. And then lastly, the terminal mount fuse blocks right on the battery. This is like a doomsday fuse. If all the other components blew, this would still protect our batteries. All right, the only thing I didn't mention on here was our Renogy 500 amp battery monitor. You can get a lot of really cool battery monitors. Some are Bluetooth, some are very high tech. I went with something in the middle of the road. These are important though. They allow you to track and monitor everything you need to know about your batteries. There are definitely a few more things you may need in this electrical setup. Copper lugs, different switches, lights, USB ports, even specific tools I used. All of them will be in the description. If there's one area I'm most proud of in the van, it is definitely our electrical setup. It can seem very daunting, but it's actually a lot of fun to learn. All right, knowing what I know, what would I change? What would I keep the same? I love that we have 3 ways to produce energy. I really think it'll keep us out of getting in a bind. We kind of always have a backup, and that's a good feeling that you want on the road. The only thing I might have changed, I would have gotten a higher wattage inverter. Not a lot, maybe a 2000 watt inverter. Ours is great for charging our electronics, using smaller appliances like NutriBullets or coffee grinders, but anything that asks for a higher wattage, like a toaster oven or microwave, we're pretty much out of luck. All right, there you go. Feel free to comment, ask any questions you might have had. Windows and wiring, obviously both scary projects, but some of the most satisfying. If you're enjoying the videos, help us out, subscribe, use the links, click the like button. If you aren't enjoying the videos, then I wouldn't do any of those. Oh, and also don't forget, all the supplies that we used in all things electrical is right below. We kept it all in one place for you. You don't have to go searching around, it's right down there. And that's all for now.